Okay, so this is how you take the shell apart on a Athearn HO Genesis Challenger. So there's two screws up here that are under some plates. The photos that precede this will show how all that happens. But basically those got to come out. And then at the back here, there's a grab handle that goes between this drawbar. Sorry, I got it backwards there, and goes up into the cab. So that's got to come off, and I just pried it off with an X-Acto knife. Again, there's a picture in the stills above. The smoke box cover came off with an X-Acto knife. I took the bell off first, these two screws, and then these two handrails up at the very front here. These guys, they come out of the hole on this step. Once that's done, and there's two little tabs under the cab here that you just give it a little gentle squeeze. Once you do that, the thing comes apart. Now I've cheated here because I've already disconnected all the wires, but right now you'd be connected. So you can kind of turn it about like this and lay it down beside it and it'll work fine. Now because I got everything loose in here, here's this PCB board, and it's got all sorts of garbage on it that I think mainly is to deal with these smoke unit in here, which you can see. Now to get the boiler apart, there are no screws relative to the boiler under the PCB, but there are some here and right there on this boiler. There's a screw down in here too, but it doesn't do anything with the top of the boiler. So once you pull these little I don't know what you call them, grippers or whatever that are holding the wires onto the board, then the board can come off. And the way the board is designed, I'll point it out on the stills, but the pads where my fingers are, and one set of these up here, I don't remember which one it is. I got lots of stills, but one set connects through with, you can check it on a multimeter for continuity. But that's for the pickup. The blue and yellow wires go on, I believe, here, and that's for the motor. And then there's some other junk goes up to this front circuit board for the smoke unit. And I'm not exactly sure where the wires are routed yet for the front LED. Somebody asked Bill, I guess it was, if there was resistors on this thing. And I suspect that's probably the one right there for the labeled R1. For the front headlight. This capacitor might be some kind of a little Mickey Mouse keep alive, or it might be something for the smoke unit. There's a transistor here, which is probably an amplifier for the smoke unit. And then there's all these diodes on here. And I think that's what's buggering up the programming, because I had to reverse the front and rear LED's sense of direction in Decoder Pro to get it to the LEDs to align with the locomotive direction. So once this thing's out of here, and it's coming out, I took these two screws out here and over here, and as soon as you do that, you can lift the boiler off. Now there's some wires going through here, so you got to be a little careful if you're going to try and keep all this. But you know, in terms of a person could mill a ton of this out and put a boiler barker up front. I haven't weighed this yet, but it's pretty hefty, so you'd lose 25% of the weight, like if you took this off, and that might bugger up your traction on this front thing. So I'm not going to do that. If I want a speaker up here, but I'm going to use a little iPhone 4 speaker. I bought a slug of them for 60 cents each off AliExpress. So, and I only have to mill a little bit out for that. I could care less about ever having smoke coming out of a model locomotive, because all it does is gum up the track and everything around it. So I had one when I was a kid, and it was kind of cool to watch for the first 5 minutes. And then there was oil all over every bloody thing in the train layout, so I don't like them. Now, this is mainly for Raylan's sale, who's convinced that the only way to make one of these things useful is to put a powered unit behind it. And this is a fine piece of engineering. It looks like the motor, I must have lifted it at some point here. Anyway, I'll put it back in later, but This is a beautiful piece of engineering. I mean, you can kind of see the wheels walking here as I rotate the flywheels, and it really does run nice, this model. So that's that piece. At some point, maybe before I go back to Vancouver, I might snip all these wires off. I'm a little worried about doing that until I got the speaker here, because I'll forget something sure as hell. But I'm going to mill the front of this sucker just enough to put one of those little tiny iPhone speakers in there. They sound really nice, and they're cheap, and it'll really bring the sound up to the front of the locomotive. And the big speakers in the tender, I wouldn't even change them. They're really nice. There's nothing wrong with them. It's too bad Athearn didn't put a little ESU sugar cube or something up here. See, this is the problem with companies. They get all wound up about junk nobody wants, like a smoke unit. And this would have been far better to mill that out for an ESU sugar cube and have sound in the smoke box where it belongs. And I mean, in a perfect world, you're starting to get into impedance issues here unless you wire them up in series, which I guess you could wire them in parallel and then wire the two parallel sets in series and get back to 8 ohms across 4 speakers. It would really benefit from an iPhone or a sugar cube right there, and another one right here over top of the cylinders, because there's, and the real thing, you're going to get exhaust chuffs there and here, and they're going to be out of sync. And most of the really good decoders have got a slippage on the articulated engine, so they are actually out of phase a little bit. That's kind of neat. If nothing else, just being able to lift the plastic cab up will enable you to get in here to put a crew in properly, which I think is pretty cool. They've really done a nice job on this thing. I mean, look at all the bloody gauges. They all got needles, and all the valves are there, and the Johnson bars got a painted handle, and there's some kind of a, I don't know what the heck those are behind the chairs, maybe a little fridge or something for their lunch. But I mean, it's a beautiful model. It's just too bad they put all that old MRC circuitry in the tender, but I guess, forgiveness is good, because when they built this, all there was that MRC stuff. There were no Locksound 5s or Tsunami 2s. Anyway, it's a delightful model to work on. I mean, I'm quite amazed, actually, that I got the cab off that easy. And it was all just basically wiggling with an X-Acto knife blade. I used where the heck is it? I used, like, how hard it is to find a thing in a camera when you're talking. Anyway, that thing there is what I use to do all my prying with. And it's nice and thin on the edge, of course. You can get into nooks and crannies, and you just give it a little twist, and that's how the bell came off. That's how the smoke box came off. Anyway, I'll put this up on YouTube and link it in on the Model Railroad Hobbyist forum, because I've yet to find a video taking one of these apart. So there you go.